Welcome back to Philosophy of Gaming. I am Marshall. This is Shawn.
Howdy.
And today, Console Wars. Today's episode is PlayStation 1 versus Nintendo 64.
That's right. If you like this video, this is the second Console Wars that we've done. Go back and watch the first one that we did if you like this one. That one is PlayStation 5 versus Xbox Series X.
Did you do a thumbs down when I said PlayStation 1?
For over 60 years, video games have been a constant staple of pop culture. But the question still remains, which console is the best? Join Marshall and Shawn as they debate once and for all, which console reigns supreme. And so shall it commence, the Console Wars!
I just pointed over there at you, and then I pointed over here at me, like saying you're on the PlayStation side, I'm on the Nintendo side.
I feel like you went, yeah, no.
I like PlayStation. I'm not going to thumbs down it, but I have to argue against it today.
Fair. So, without further ado, let's get right into the history. So, first of all, PlayStation 1 released September of 1995, the year I was born, at 209.
wow.
Hey.
Yeah.
September 95 at $299 and was the first successful disc-based console.
$299. That seems like a lot for a first-gen console like that.
Yeah, yep.
Way back then, my
first
goodness.
Gen.
Of PlayStation.
First gen of PlayStation. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It sold over 100 million units before it was discontinued, just a year before the PlayStation 3 in 2006. In total...
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy that it went so long. It went
Yeah.
through the entire PlayStation 2 life cycle, and then the last year they were like, yeah, we got the new one coming. You're done. You're done. You came out in 94.
95.
That's what it came out in. Okay, you're right. It came out in 94 in
95.
Japan. Came out in 95 in America. We're going off America because we live there. In total, 3,061 games were released based off of the sources I have found that I cannot count as reliable, but I imagine it is relatively true.
Relatively. We'll go with that.
The Nintendo 64 released in September of 1996, a year later, at $199, with 39.9 million units sold before it was discontinued in 2002. With a total of 388 games. So a bit of discrepancy in release, length, sales, that
True,
kind of thing.
but if you break that down though, right? PlayStation ran for twice as long as Nintendo, had how many more games? Almost 10 times
Yeah.
as many games.
Yeah.
And yet still somehow, right? The Nintendo managed to still have a third of the sales.
More, actually. Pretty
That-
close to...
That seems like a
Yeah.
pretty efficient model right there, if you ask me.
Okay.
Kind of like a quality over quantity sort of a scenario, it seems like here. I almost think that's a plus for the Nintendo right off the bat.
Okay. I'll give it
You
to
know what I mean? Like if you were to break down those numbers, like per capita, it seems like Nintendo did better.
Per capita.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to use that term.
I'm not sure if it is, but I do know one thing. Neither of us
fact-check
know
me
how
on
to
that.
use it.
Yeah, that's true.
What about we talk about a little bit of the system capabilities, Shawn?
That's right. So it's funny how I'm going to be the one going through this because I don't even know
It is funny.
anything that I'm going to be sharing with you guys right now.
I also don't know because he hasn't shared it with me.
Yeah, but you're at least going to know what I'm saying. So
True.
let us start off with the CPU because you know what that means, and I don't. So the Nintendo CPU, this says 64-bit NEC VR 4300 at 93.75 megahertz. Whatever that means. And then for the PlayStation, it's R3000 at 33.86 megahertz. So it sounds like the Nintendo had a lot more megahertzes than the...
I'll tell you one thing right off the bat. You went way too far into these numbers and acronyms because I have no clue what you're talking about.
Maybe somebody that's watching this does.
What were the megahertz per console again? Just the megahertz. I don't
So-
want the other stuff.
Nintendo, a little bit over 93, and PlayStation, which is, where did I just see that? Oh, 33, almost 34.
And we're talking about the RAM?
CPU.
The CPU.
That's right.
Okay, so the CPU of the PlayStation original was a third of the capabilities of the N64.
Remind me again what CPU is.
It's your computer. It's the processor. It's your processor that runs what's happening. So you have your CPU that sends out millions of signals telling this to do that and that to do this constantly at a certain speed, and the speed is the megahertz. So that's how fast it's doing it.
Got it. Okay.
You have a GPU. I don't know if these guys had GPUs. You might tell me in a minute.
I don't see anything on there.
I doubt it. And
memory is the next thing on the list. You want to know what that is?
Sure, let's move on.
Okay. Memory for PlayStation, 2 megabyte RAM. Nintendo 4.
Okay.
Megabytes.
Double the RAM. It's crazy how much better the PlayStation games looked. They must have been way better optimized.
Hold on.
Way better optimized. It sounds like a callback to our last episode.
I don't know how true that is. There's a lot of good Nintendo looking games out there, I think.
They're good. Yeah. They're just not on that console. That's all.
Okay. Basically, it sounds like Nintendo was way more powerful of a machine than PlayStation. Point for Nintendo. Right? Can you admit that?
With what you read to me?
The
Sure.
numbers don't lie.
What you read to me.
And it's from the internet, so that's how you know it's true.
I've actually read that everything on the internet is true.
Every single thing.
I actually read that on the internet.
So did I. Great. That's how you know. So now let's
It probably is true. We're having fun.
That's right. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about kind of like the hardware, accessories, and the controllers, right?
Okay.
So we can kind of get into storage for a second because, and this might be a pro or a con, I'm not 100% sure. The Nintendo stored all of the data on the cartridges themselves, whereas PlayStation had the memory cards, right?
Well, slightly. I mean, not completely on the Nintendo side.
Right. They made an aftermarket like memory card pack that plugs into the bottom of the controller, but that was like for maybe half a dozen games that required that.
Yeah, it wasn't huge. It was really nice, and I think they probably, I'd have to look at the timing, but they probably came out because they realized that they were a little behind on that specific thing. I do remember that the original PlayStation memory cards had 8 megabytes of storage.
Hi, this is the voice of your friendly neighborhood editor, Eric here, with a correction on Marshal's part. Marshall is actually thinking a generation ahead because the PS1 cards only had about 128 kilobytes of storage. The PS2 is actually the one that had 8 megabytes of storage. So, good thinking on Marshall's part, but we're not there just yet. So, we now return you to your regularly scheduled video.
I remember that specifically because it said it right on the memory card, the PlayStation branded ones. And you, at the end of the PlayStation 2 life cycle, you could get like a 32 megabyte, like the big boys, and you're like, man, there's way more storage. But I remember filling up storage.
Right, but so what are the pros and cons to that though, right? So if you want to play, if you have like a library of PlayStation games, you're probably gonna have to get a lot of memory cards in order to have the save data for all that, right? Because you can't save to the disc itself, which on the Nintendo 64, you can have a full library of games and just play on each and every one of your cartridges, and you can take your cartridge over to a buddy's house and all your data just goes with you.
Yeah, right? I mean, having the memory card was really cool for a PlayStation owner because you just take that with you and you're good. Everything comes with you.
True.
But you're right. When it comes to just bringing a cartridge with you,
if you want to let a friend borrow a game, PlayStation would probably be better with that.
Because you don't want them to take your save file with them because they might delete it.
I just made a case for PlayStation. What is wrong with me? But it's true, though. That is true. That is one good thing about PlayStation. I'd give PlayStation that one as far as the storage goes.
Yeah, I think that the storage was just better. I mean, granted, it was really cool that all the storage was built into the cartridges for the most of the Nintendo 64 games, but I think that
it's convenient.
We'll have to do a bit more research, and we'll make another video about this at some point, but I think that the convenience does not defeat the let's say
versatility
of the PlayStation card. Like, you had that card, and it did so much for you that, like I said, you could, like you said, you could loan a game to somebody and just hand them the game, and you were done. And you still have your save file. You don't have to worry about it at all. I think that it comes down to, it was a little easier if you just took your cartridge with you and your save file came with you when you went over to a friend's. But if you loaned a friend a game, you'd be stressed. Yeah. Whereas all you had to do was add bringing the memory card with you on the PlayStation. Right. And no big deal.
You're right.
So, yeah.
But you also might have to buy more memory cards depending on how many games you have, too. Only downside, I don't think it stacks up, though.
I don't think it stacks up either. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I mean, a memory card was probably relatively inexpensive. I don't remember. I don't buy one new at that time. But, I think that's a edge.
Yeah, towards PlayStation. I'll give you that. That's an edge. So let's talk about the differences between cartridge and disc, and this is going to automatically be an edge for the Nintendo 64 because I think one of the most nostalgic memories that we all have as kids playing Nintendo 64
is doing the thing that ruins them.
If it's broken and it's not working, you just grab it and you go and then plug it back in and it works. It's like you become a tech guy with the Nintendo.
It sounded like you just blew into a cartridge just there.
I know, it was good, right? And then when it comes to the discs, though, I mean, if they get scratched, they're done.
You got to get it cleaner, and you got to hope it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't
ruin
even
anything.
Work then, right?
Yeah, I think so. The disc could store more, which is the benefit of the disc.
Yeah, but it didn't store anything because it got stored on the card.
No, the game.
You're talking about the game itself.
The game, it could store more. But yeah, I mean, discs degrade over time. They're going to fail. I mean, over the next 30 to 40 years, there are going to be very, very few disc-based games that are still in the right quality that they should be that were from the PlayStation 1 era. They were on CDs. That's pretty small and pretty old at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting we're thinking about too, because PlayStation CD, PlayStation 2 DVD, PlayStation 3 Blu-ray. Yeah.
And
that's
so
kind of interesting.
So I would say that the cartridges, as long as they continue to last, which based on research they will, and they will outlive us. The discs will not. As long as they are being used, they will not.
Yeah, because they're constantly spinning, and I mean, they just get scratched being used. You don't even have to mishandle
thousands of revolutions per minute. Yeah. Like, they're not going to last forever. Whereas the cartridges are
do you remember
completely different technology.
Like, as a kid, like, you'd be sitting there and you hear the disc drive in your PlayStation. It just sounds like it's scratching. Yeah. I remember that always sounded like nails on a chalkboard.
Nails on, I was going to say,
my game just being destroyed right now.
Yeah.
So, Edge, Nintendo.
Sure, we'll go Edge Nintendo on that
right.
one. Well, I think we need to do a bit more research, but as of what we know today, Edge Nintendo.
Edge Nintendo, yeah. How about, and I think that this one you might not see eye to eye with me on at all, controller design.
Yeah, if you don't see eye to eye with me on this, then you're a psychopath.
Big talk.
I already am a psychopath. I like to play the inverted Y-axis.
What are you, a freak?
So. PlayStation controller is absolutely superior. Yeah, it's a cool controller.
It is cool.
It's cool, but it's not functional.
It's totally functional.
No.
More big talk.
Dude, the PlayStation, I know the original PlayStation didn't have DualShock, didn't have two sticks, whatever, but eventually you had two sticks you could reach at the same time and easily reach buttons. Camera. You could reach the D-pad. You could reach both your sticks. They never had that. You just had your one in the center. Now, if you want to do stuff on the left side of your controller, you have to move your hand. So you got to have your other hand on the right side and then let go of the middle hand. See? That's wrong.
But if you get good at it, it means that you have developed a far greater and superior level of dexterity and thus become a more skilled gamer because of the Nintendo controller.
Did you write that?
Oh, I just came up with that just now.
That's so dumb.
That's so true, though. It trains your hands to be a good gamer. Maybe that's why I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm a decent gamer.
Decent.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the Smash videos, go check them out because you'll see him being a decent gamer. So the N64 had a couple other cool little features that you could get for it. So one was,
I almost forgot.
Yeah, the expansion pack that you could plug into your controller if you, I guess, didn't have a memory card to plug into your controller. The expansion pack weird. Increase the RAM on your console from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes. That's very weird that it was in your
Controller.
I'm wrong. It wasn't in your controller. Scratch that. It was in your console. Okay, you put it in the console expansion pack. I was going to say, that doesn't make any sense.
So is it kind of like a Game Shark, or like, because I don't know what this
It's a different spot for it to plug in. So you'd have to
Okay.
take something else out and put it in there. You put the expansion pack in there. It increased your RAM from 4 to 8 megabytes, which is pretty cool. But you think, like, what is this for?
Yeah, do you even need that
Do
for
you
something
need-
like that? Or-
Right. So
yeah.
you do need it for a couple games. The biggest two, and only two that really anyone, I don't want to say anyone played, because people played other ones.
The most popular mainstream.
The most popular
games, right?
ones,
Yeah.
DK64 and Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
That one makes sense, but DK, that was
I don't know. I think the graphics actually looked really good in that, though.
maybe it's all like the background stuff or something.
Must be. So it was required to have that to play either of those games. And if you have done it without that, please let us know in the comments, because from what we have found online, we can't find anything to say otherwise.
Yeah.
You have to have that if you wanted to play either of those games, along with, I think, like 6 or 7 others, but there were games that I had never heard of. I never had a Nintendo 64, and Shawn didn't have a lot of experience with, so we kind of just chalked it up to those two being the ones.
Other accessories, though, the Rumble Pack was also pretty cool.
That one went in your controller.
That's right.
I'm right
And then
this
the other
time.
thing that goes in the
No,
controller.
we rumble the console.
That was ridiculous what you just said. But the other cool thing, though, too, that Nintendo 64 had is it had the Game Boy pack that plugs into it.
Yes.
So there's a lot of games where you can commingle your Game Boy game with the the Nintendo 64 one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most famous and obvious example for us on that, it was the Pokemon games, right? So you can take your Pokemon Red version Game Boy game, plug it into your Nintendo 64, go play Pokemon Stadium, and transfer all of your Pokemon and take on Pokemon Stadium with your Pokemon from the game, and not have to use like just the vanilla preloaded Pokemon that are in the game. And not only that, you could play your Game Boy your Game Boy games through the Nintendo 64 on the screen. That was something that was unheard of. Like, I know nowadays playing handheld anythings, as long as you can get a USB to an HDMI, something, you can watch it on any screen or play it on any screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was the first time that you were able to do that, and was huge at that time. I remember this, why I loved it so much, because the original Game Boy Colors and Game Boy Pockets and Game Boys, they didn't have any backlighting, so it was really hard to actually see the screen. So the fact that you can
play
put
it on a
that
TV?
on a TV was insanely awesome.
I remember I didn't have that on Nintendo 64 because I didn't have one, but I remember having that on the GameCube, and I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, they did the same thing, but with Game Boy Advance games.
Yep. You could play Game Boy Color on it too, though.
True. I mean, you go back.
But that was super cool. I remember like having that and being like, it was mind blowing at the time, and it's something now that you look at and you're like, what? I can play Pokemon on my computer. You couldn't play Pokemon on your computer back then. Like, you couldn't get it. And so you had to have the regular cartridge, and that was really cool. That's a pretty neat little accessory. The PlayStation didn't really have
I was just going to
lot
ask.
in the way of accessories. I mean, even when it launched, it had a controller. It had no dual sticks, no sticks.
Didn't even have Rumble, right?
It didn't have Rumble. You know, it wasn't until a little while into the life cycle. I don't want to say when because I can't remember. It was only a little while in when they actually released the DualShock 1 controller. And that was great. That was a
But
huge
that's not an
advancement.
accessory, though, really. I mean,
No, it isn't. You're right.
I mean, Nintendo 64, they released newer, updated controllers too.
yeah, you had
Nothing
the multi
compared to the original, in my opinion.
You
but-
had the multi-tap where you could play with 4 people at once, but obviously the Nintendo 64 came with that built in. Although the PlayStation came out before it, and so it was kind of different.
So it seems like all of the accessories that PlayStation had made it to have the capabilities that Nintendo already had built in, such as playing with 4 people, saving data.
But it came out first, so the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So they were with the times, and then Nintendo
A
said
year,
we're
though?
passing the times, and they were like, oh, we'll catch up. I mean, one thing that the Nintendo 64 did not have that the PlayStation did is the capability to play CDs.
Ooh, big deal.
Whatever, dude. Okay.
You know what else had the capability to play CDs?
CD players.
Yeah, for like $7, you can buy one.
A CD player.
Yeah.
When?
Back then,
$7?
I'm guessing.
I don't think so.
Probably.
Probably not.
Okay, 15.
Probably 30.
Anyways.
You're old.
Let's talk about some of the most fun parts of this debate, even though a lot of this was pretty fun because
The most fun part.
The most fun part is talking about the games themselves, right?
Absolutely.
So, out of your 3,000 plus games, which are the ones that you think stand out that define the PlayStation 1?
All right, so I was doing a little bit of research on this because
I know one, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to say, and I want to see if that you're thinking the same one I am. When I think of PlayStation 1 games, there is a lot of games, but there is the game.
Because it's the game you played?
No, it's just the game for PlayStation.
There's a game that I played a lot. We'll see if it's the same one. You want to count it down and shout it?
But that's not what I'm trying to say, though. It's not like a game that we played a lot. Like, to me, when you think of iconic games for the PlayStation 1, there's one game that seems like everybody had. It was like an icon, kind of like how Pokemon is like an icon for Game Boy.
I think you're talking about a different game than I thought you were talking about, because the game that I played, I didn't know people who had this game.
Really?
Yeah, but I loved it, and it was something that I played a ton of.
Okay, so we'll see if we're talking about the same game.
3, 2, 1.
Twisted Metal.
No way. No way, dude. No way.
Yeah.
My God.
But okay, everybody thinks of things like Spyro and things like that when it comes to PlayStation, but I mean,
Pretty
come
popular, yeah.
Twisted Metal is the PlayStation 1
Dude,
game.
I love
kind of like
Twisted Metal.
Mario's Nintendo.
Dude,
right?
I was playing, I played all the Twisted Metals. I loved it so much. I think it was just like a really cool party game. And that's why you say, like,
Yeah.
when you were saying like everyone has it, I'm like, I'm not thinking everyone has it or everyone knows about it, or not. Everyone does know about it because they come over to my house, they play it. They come over to anyone's house who has it, you play it, because it was like the party game, like you said, for the PlayStation. Like at that time, it definitely was.
Now Nintendo has its the game.
Okay.
This is going to be controversial because when everybody thinks Nintendo, they're going to say Mario something or other. I mean, so let me just go through some of those first, because obviously,
Sure, go ahead.
Super Mario 64, Mario Kart, Mario Party. I mean, big, huge games, super
kidding.
cool, super awesome. But when I think of Nintendo 64, there's one game that stands out, and it became the Kleenex of all video games. What I mean by that is that Kleenex is a brand of tissues, right? And so when you say, hey, you don't say, can you hand me a tissue? You say, hey, can you hand me a Kleenex? Even though that's not the brand. There's one particular game, though, like when you talk to your buddies and say, hey, you want to come over and play video games? Do you want to come over and play Nintendo? Nobody said that. You would always say, do you want to come over and play 007? 007 GoldenEye, the Nintendo game, revolutionized shooting games, multiplayer shooters, first-person shooters. I think that is one of the most revolutionary video games of all time.
It's a good game.
That's all you have to say?
What color is the cartridge?
Gray.
Boo.
I can only think of a handful.
It should be gold. It's called
be.
GoldenEye.
Should be, but that's because of the story.
I have not played it. I have watched people play it.
Oh, you poor child.
When I was a child, I watched you play it.
I know, but I was playing it when you were born. And, well,
You were not playing it when I was born.
no, you said you were born in 96. I was playing very shortly after that.
I said
though.
I was born in when?
You said you were born in 95.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were 4.
I was playing 007 at like 5 or 6.
4 years old?
5 or
This
6.
man, dude.
Kindergarten, 007. Absolutely.
So can I rattle off something since you interrupted me and took everything away from me after asking me a question?
Jeez. Sorry.
So, when it comes to like PlayStation games, a lot of the stuff I was reading about, people are saying that like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII are like number ones or number twos.
Very popular.
They are very popular, and actually Final Fantasy VII is one of the best-selling games on the console.
I would say even among some of the best-selling, most popular games of all time too. I would give that. As far as RPGs goes, that's probably
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, even like if I look right now at this list, number 1, Gran Turismo.
Obvious.
And number 2,
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII. Number 3, Gran Turismo 2. Number 4, Final Fantasy VIII. It's like it was dominated by 2 companies. Like, And I will give it that much. Like, I played a lot of different games, and I actually didn't play Final Fantasy at this time, but I did play Gran Turismo, and it's crazy how much they came.
Yeah.
What? It's crazy how much they came into their own, both of those genres at this moment, because Gran Turismo and Final Fantasy are both very much alive today. And I mean, granted, Final Fantasy was on the Nintendo before the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, but it didn't really become something until PlayStation.
It changed in PlayStation, and they did incredible. Dude, Final Fantasy 7 released in 97 and did 10 million sales. 10 million.
That's 10% of the number of consoles that PlayStation sold. One game.
Yeah, it's 25% of the.
Which really makes me wonder, like, what is
Nintendo 64 sales?
What's with the other 3,000 games? Is it all just kind of like random, generic, just kind of?
It must be. I mean, the top games, I've heard of every single one of them. All 30 of them, or 50, 60 of them. Well, this is going to 200.
I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of them that we know.
It's just crazy how many games they put out on the PlayStation 1.
True, but also remember, 12 years, so they probably had a lot of PlayStation 2 games that released that were also on PlayStation 1. They probably did a lot of that.
That's true. I mean, by the time they discontinued the PlayStation 1, the GameCube was about to get discontinued. Like, the Wii was coming out in another year, and the GameCube was probably about to get discontinued, and this PlayStation 1 is still going strong. They released multiple editions of it. The one we have here is probably the coolest one, I think. It's my favorite one.
One of the old school classic ones.
Yeah. With the Nintendo 64, they did a bunch of different colors, which was really cool. They did, like, the see-through, like, the purple, like you have a controller of there. They did I love those. Those are super cool. So.
Yeah, but that's just kind of a matter of taste, though. You can't really give an edge, right?
I guess not.
But, yeah, I don't know. When it comes to games, it's hard to really do any sort of edge one way or another because but that I think is why the console wars are fun.
What are some of the games you played
on Nintendo 64?
Yeah,
well, Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 007. Like I said, 007 was the game I played most of all. The Pokemon's like Stadium, Pokemon Snap. I played the first Rainbow Six game.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
black
crazy.
cartridge, so you would like that.
That's cool.
There was a Kirby game, Star Fox 64. I can't believe it took me that long to say that. But I mean, yeah, the thing that's
Super Smash Bros.
Of course, yeah. But that's what's cool about like the console war discussion is because we can rattle off all of the system capabilities and everything that we've already talked about. But what really makes a console is the games, right? And so when you think of a console, you think of the games that came out for it. And there are such iconic games on both PlayStation and Nintendo, and they contributed to what games are today, right? Final Fantasy, Gran Turismo, like you said. And then, I mean, hell, just Mario and 007 alone on the Nintendo 64 is enough to create legacies of gaming for decades to come.
Yeah.
And that's not even to mention all of the other good games that were like on multiple different consoles and stuff too. Like one of the ones that we've been talking about off camera, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 in specific.
Yeah, Tony Hawk. Yep.
I mean, that was huge game at the time.
One of the top selling on the PlayStation 1, actually.
And that was on Sega Dreamcast also, which is irrelevant, unfortunately.
But it's just crazy because we're saying this probably pretty early in our console wars series, but at the end of the day, they're all good. They're both good. All the games are good, and the capabilities are not what's important.
Well, some people would argue with that.
But they're wrong.
I personally don't care because I don't even know what they are.
But they're wrong. That's my point.
Yeah.
The capabilities are cool. Yeah. Oh, this has this many teraflops or this many megahertz or megabytes of RAM and storage and speed, and it's all cool until you play the games that are made for it, and they all just work. Doesn't matter. They all work. And they all work, and they're good. Yeah, you're right. 388 games for the Nintendo 64 compared to 3,000 games for the PlayStation 1. There was probably a bit more quality over quantity when it came to the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, because almost anything that came out on Nintendo was like mainstream.
Right. And so it's like, yeah, there's probably something to be said for that. But at the end of the day, man, both consoles had bangers. Like, I don't know what else. They both were just chock full of really, really good games, and I'm glad that we got to grow up in that era because I don't think that will happen again. Not to say that every console isn't like this, because for the most part they are, but
I'm glad to grow up in that era because that means that we got to witness the evolution of gaming almost from the beginning. I started at Super Nintendo, so I kind of missed the original NES.
I started on the original NES,
yeah,
because that's just what my stepdad had at the time, and so and then I got to kind of advance to the Game Boy Advance. No.
But that's what's so cool though, like about our generation though, is like kids that are born today, they're not gonna know, like they just know what's out now.
Yep.
And nobody will ever experience that kind of thing again.
No, you never blown a cartridge. Like if you have a computer, you can play anything. So why have the old stuff? Why have any of it? Because it all plays on your computer, if you even want to. Because a lot of the time nowadays, people will look. I even do this. I look at some of these games that I'm like, they're nostalgic, and I'm like, I want to play it, and I boot it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really interested in this anymore. It's nothing like what today's
back
games
then,
are.
though,
They're
was
just
the cream
incredible.
of the crop, right?
They're incredible still. They're still masterpieces. There's just something to be said about graphical capabilities and voice acting and stuff like that we don't get in these older games. That's really the biggest change. Other than that, the gameplay is still generally really, really good.
The gameplay is also a lot different, though, too. I mean, now, like, there's just so much of, like, a diverse way of like controlling combat and stuff like that. Like it's advanced so insane, but you have to have a foundation to build on, and I think that's what these two consoles really, I think
they created it.
The foundation really of gaming to what it is today. There's a lot of consoles, but I think the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64 really started.
Yeah,
all
I
of
agree.
it.
This is where it started. I mean, obviously there were consoles before this, but this is where what gaming is today, where it began. And I think that's incredible. And yeah, I mean,
and that's why when it comes to these console wars, kind of like what you were getting ready to say or what you were alluding to earlier, the real winner is us. Aw, we didn't even plan that.
Console friendships.
That's right.
Not console wars.
Friendship again.
But still, I think that Nintendo probably won for this video. So
whatever. All right. Well, thanks guys for watching, and I hope that you share with us in the comments what your thoughts are. What is your favorite game on either one, or what did you grow up with?
And fill in the gaps on some of the things that we didn't quite hit. Yeah,
we probably flew through this way too fast. We were very excited to get onto the games, and then it just tumbled from there. So anyway, share your thoughts with us in the comments. Let us know what you think. Catch you on the next one.
See ya.
See ya.